Welcome back to the podcast. Okay, how is your relationship with food? And how is your relationship with food when you're stressed, overwhelmed, and burnout? That's what we're uncovering today, and I've got Jason Levee here, and we're diving into all of these things. Welcome to the Balance Code Podcast, a place for high achievers to step outside the hamster wheel of day-to-day life and start learning tools for more balance. I'm your host, Katie Russler, and I will be guiding you on this journey of discovering your balance code. So, Jason, thank you for being here. Take a moment to introduce yourself, share a little bit about what you do, where you are, and who you serve.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Katie. I'm excited to be here today and to talk to your audience. So my name is Jason Levee. I'm a registered dietitian, and I'm also the founder of Whole Family Health. So I provide nutrition counseling services to adults, children, and families, really focused on busy families. How do you make it work for yourself, your significant other, your kids, whoever's in the household? And how do you make it work from a nutrition perspective without burning yourself out, without running yourself ragged, while meeting everyone's different and changing tastes and needs and preferences? And if you have little kids, they change daily. So I live in New York, in New York City. I grew up just outside New York City, and I've lived here for over a decade. And I have 3 little kids, so I'm in this every day. So between running the company, seeing patients, doing things like podcasts, taking care of my kids, it's a busy life. And I'm also a reformed investment banker, so I also get the burnout side of it as well. So excited to talk about it today, because I think, the relationship to food that we all have and that we pass on to those around us is of utmost importance. And, it's something that we can all learn a little bit more about.
I agree. And I want to explore, before we dive into it, tell me how you went from the investment banking, right? Is what that?
Yeah.
Nutrition.
Yeah. So I followed a pretty traditional path in college. I was an economics major. I graduated college in 2008, which was not a great time to go into finance, but was really lucky to be relatively young, cheap, and hardworking at that point. So I wasn't impacted by too directly, but I worked in finance for close to a decade, and I would come home from work every day, and my wife would look at me and she'd be like, "You look tired and miserable. Like, what's going on?" And this is before we had any of our kids, and I was like, I'm like good at what I do, but I really don't care about it at all. Like, I'm so unfulfilled by this. And she's like, "Well, look, like, you are 30 years old," or whatever I was at that point. I think I was about 30. And she's like, "You have probably another 30 plus years of working. Like, do you really want to do something that you're going to hate every day? Or do you want to figure out what's actually going to drive you and actually going to excite you every single day?" And I turned around, I was like, "I think you should be a motivational speaker, like give up the teaching thing that you're doing."
You got out your calling, wife. There you go.
Yeah. I was like, no, so the next thing is Steph. I was like, "Steph, I'm ready to run through a wall." But so I had a pretty difficult weight loss journey myself, as a kid and through adolescence and into adulthood. And it was life-changing for me. I grew up really overweight, and when I was in college, I finally found a way to kind of retake control over what I was eating and my behaviors around food. And I lost a bunch of weight, which was my goal. So for me, that was a good thing. And I felt a lot better. My confidence went up, and I just moved better, lived better. Everything was better as a result, directly and indirectly. But I never saw a career. The dietitian field is like 95% or so female in the United States. And, it just didn't seem like the most approachable field for me as like an 18 or 19-year-old time. And I also didn't really see it as a career path. So, but, you fast forward to, I guess, about 7 or so years ago, and Steph was like, "Look, talk to a couple dietitians, see what they do, see if it's what you want to do." Talk to them, fell in love with it, went back to school, got my master's at NYU, did all the training. As an econ major, my science classes were like oceanography and like age of dinosaurs, like not related to the human body at all. So almost had to redo my bachelor's degree. And fortunately, there's lots of options in New York for where you can do those types of things. So, took all the classes, did all the training, did my internship at a great hospital down in Baltimore during the pandemic. So that was interesting as well. And I've been practicing as a dietitian now for the last 3 years, I guess 4 years, something like that. And I love it. It's what lights me up every single day. And I get to work with people and we talk about food. It's such an interesting lens to learn about someone's upbringing or their relationship with the people around them, or their medical history and how their body reacts to different types of foods. And it's fascinating. It can be a window into your culture. It can be a window into, kind of these long-held beliefs. Or I learn about how people learn information every single day. And sometimes we get it from good sources and sometimes we get it from less reputable sources, we'll say. And when it comes to food, I think just like anything else, there's a lot of good information out there. There's a lot of bad information out there, and it's really, really hard to parse through it, especially when things are really slickly produced or made really easy to understand in ways that logically make sense, but actually biologically don't make sense. And so I think, those are, some of the things that I encounter every single day. Like I said, I mostly work with really, really busy people. So it's, I'm efficient with my words and efficient with the way that we attack problems that they're having or challenges that they're facing. And we take a really iterative approach to make sure that we're, taking one step at a time in the right direction and really taking a long-term approach.
So your own experience with the relationship with food, and now you're working with others with their relationship with food. Let's get into, how we can't group all high achievers the same, right? Some stress eat, some just skip meals, right? Some go the all sugar, all salt food route and caffeine. So starting out, when you have somebody who comes to you and it's like, I got so much on my plate, I'm doing all this, I got that, I'm, right? Like you just said, got my kids, I got my career, all these things, I'm building everything. How do you get them to understand that truly food and them have a relationship to begin with? Because most of the time they're just like, if food is just a thing, like, no, you have a relationship with food, whether you realize it or not.
So I think education is the key. Learning how your body uses food, how it uses different foods and what the building blocks of our foods are, really unlocks for a lot of people this insight into, there is a direct relationship between what I ate an hour ago and how I feel right now. And as you kind of extend that, you can say, okay, let's think about what I ate or drank yesterday and how I feel today. Sometimes I make it as simple as, let's just talk about water. We're not even going to touch food. Let's just talk about water. How much water are you drinking? And sometimes I'll get a response like, water? Like, I haven't just had water in a really long time. But okay, let's talk about anything that's not sugary or not caffeinated. So herbal teas could be fine, or even a 0-calorie sports drink, like a Gatorade Zero or something like that, which I would count roughly toward hydration. And we can talk about those types of things. And sometimes there's nothing there either. So we're running on coffee or lattes or all sorts of different types of either caffeinated beverages or sweetened beverages, energy drinks. I think a lot of the energy drinks have been marketed in a way where people think that they can be hydrating, but the caffeine is diuretic. So
right,
pretty tricky to calculate that.
Yep.
Yeah. So we talked just about that, and I'll say, okay, we're going to go out on a limb and say you're not drinking zero water, but you're probably not drinking enough. So let's figure out, roughly where you are, and let's just step it up a little bit, right? Let's step it up. Maybe you're at, 16 ounces of water in a day. Let's go up by 8 ounces. Let's just go to 24, right? So that's just one more cup of water. It's, it feels approachable. Let's do that for a week and let's see how you feel, right? So we come back the next week, talk about it. Wow, I didn't notice it, but I actually ended up drinking 32 ounces of water a day. I didn't realize how thirsty I was because I've been doing this for so long that my body has stopped giving me these signals, or my body probably didn't stop, but I stopped interpreting them as thirst. And I also realized, as I started drinking more water, I wasn't necessarily eating as much or eating past the point of fullness anymore because my body was able to differentiate between hunger and thirst. It's a really common misconception, or not misconception, misinterpretation is, you got the signal from your body I'm hungry. So you eat something, you're still hungry, so you eat something else, and you keep eating, but you're actually just thirsty the whole time, right? So you're dehydrated and your body's trying to give you every signal it can, and you're really just thirsty. So we start with something that feels really approachable. Water is usually my first thing I think about, but if it's someone who's already well hydrated, then we can kind of talk about maybe it's talking about fruit and all the nutrients that are in it, and how that can impact your day to day, how it can impact, whatever's important to you. If it's, someone is focused on their skin, we can talk about hydration and fruit and antioxidants and why that's really important for your skincare and your skin health. If it's someone who's concerned about energy level, we can talk about the detrimental side of under eating, or like skipping breakfast, nibbling on something for lunch, and then realizing you're starving at 3 o'clock. I see this a lot in kids also. So realizing you're starving at 3 o'clock, and then what happens then, and what happens with your energy level throughout the course of the day as you're kind of having this really, really large meal after fasting for so long. And, how can that play games with your blood sugar, even if you're not diabetic, right? So how do we balance that out? So we kind of take whatever it is that you're working on and simplify it down to one thing to work on. Let's make it one thing, because you've got enough other things going on in your life. So we're not going to attack it. We're not going to tackle everything all at once. And even if you have nothing that's going on in your life, I would never say let's tackle everything all at once. Let's do 1, 2, maximum 3 things, right? Usually it's one, and let's see how it goes. So it's, it's about building the relationship with the person I'm working with, and helping them figure out what's the one thing that I can control right now, and then have that become their new norm. So that way, when life gets crazy again, or it gets crazier again, you've kind of lifted the floor on whatever it is. So if it's water, now their new normal is drinking 32 ounces of water. Do I want them drinking more than that? Yeah. But if they're dropping down only to 32 instead of 16, like, that's a step in the right direction, right? And it's a long-term game. It's not about what did I do yesterday. It's about what am I going to do over the next week, over the next month, over the next 3 months. That's what's really going to have an impact on your body.
And, I'm going to bring in the mental health piece of this to what you're just saying, because what needs to be explored then as you're fixing the relationship with food and hydration is, why was I okay with starving my body? Why was I okay with limiting myself from these things and willing to push through and work more hours or do whatever it might be, like skip those meals? Because there's this correlation between this feeling of like, well, I'll survive, I can get through it, and the long-term effect that it has on our body, right? And that's where you're coming in going like, hold on, mayday, let's just start small and think small. Like, let's just get your health back under your control by improving the relationship you have with food, and recognizing it's not the enemy because it takes time to eat, right? Like, oh God, I don't have time. Well, it's not the enemy. That's not the problem.
Yeah. And when we think about the time, like, I often, the people I'm working with will be sitting in front of a computer or otherwise distracted while they're eating, and they don't realize what they're eating or get to enjoy it, or it doesn't necessarily register that they've eaten anything at all at the day at lunch. We are notoriously bad historians for what we've eaten, as a general public. Like, if I asked you what you ate in the last 24 hours, you'd probably get somewhere between 60 and 70% correct. And that's just for anybody. It's not, we're not very reliable. And so, if we're distracted, we're certainly not going to be reliable because we aren't going to remember it. So it's, really about, okay, like, you're going to take 20 minutes to eat your lunch in the middle of the workday. That break is really going to help you. Like, if you've just been staring at a screen for hours and hours and hours and haven't gotten up, haven't done anything else, and you're just going to sit there and stare at your screen while you're eating your lunch, you're not going to be as productive. But if you take a 20-minute break, a 10-minute break, whatever it is, like, get up and walk around for 5 minutes even, you'll come back, you'll have the blood moving a little bit, you'll be a little bit recharged. I'm not going to say it's like the same as sleeping 8 hours overnight, but you'll have gotten a little bit of a break in the middle of the day, and it'll help you come back with a fresh set of eyes, and you'll be able to be a little bit more productive, and maybe you'll be done with your work a little bit.
It's like the rest is productive, and eating healthy and hydrating is productive too. Like, else with productivity.
Yeah, it can help you be productive. It can help you with your stress management. It can help you to prioritize, think a bit more clearly, focus. Like, there's so many benefits to eating a healthy diet. But again, taking one step at a time and, incrementally improving and lifting the floor, kind of the way that I'd like to think about it.
Yeah. And so I liked you gave the tip of, like, you would normally say, okay, let's just start with water, right? Notorious for high achievers is that afternoon slump, like, oh, need some energy. They go for the caffeine, they go for the sweets. let's get to the practical. Give us some tools. What are some things what could be that replacement that we try out next week? And we go, okay, I'm going to try this in the afternoon instead of XYZ.
Yeah. So water. Water is certainly something you can reach for instead. Going for a walk, right? So if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, it is spring now, and at least in New York, we've started to have sort of better weather. But get up and go outside, right? Go outside for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, or whatever you can do to get a little break in the middle of the day. Get some fresh air, get some sunlight, and move your body a little bit. I'm not saying go like do a workout class in the middle of the day, but go outside and walk around for a couple minutes and see how much better you feel, right? If you can get a water to bring with you, great. If not, that's okay too. If you're feeling hungry, instead of reaching for things that are, full of sugar or have a lot of added sugar in them, and look, I think there's a place for those things in your diet. I'm not going to say don't have them, but it's important to be mindful of the amount and the frequency. I think, in nutrition, it kind of comes down to how often are you doing this, and when you do it, how much. So reach for something that is, like fruit-based or vegetable-based, plus something that has protein or fat in it. So the options would be like an apple and peanut butter, or if you don't want to have like peanut butter in the office, like apple and almonds or banana and almonds or some type of nut. If you can't have nuts, that's fine. Have like a Greek yogurt with some fruit. Don't get like the pre-flavored ones. Get the unflavored. I don't care what percentage of fat you do. I think in general, full fat dairy can be pretty good for us, and non-fat dairy also has its place. Add some fruit to it to round out the nutrients a little bit more, and that's going to give you energy, and it's actually going to keep you full for a pretty long time as well. So it'll help you carry through the afternoon and into the evening, rather than taking you on this like energy journey of like, okay, I caffeinated, my energy is really, really high, and now I'm going to crash. And so now I'm going to go back and get another coffee, and now my energy is really, really high, and probably not as high as it was before, and then I'm going to crash again. And the same thing for sugar, where your blood sugar is just going to be like on this curve of like up and down, up and down, up and down, which every once in a while, probably no big deal. Over the long run, we start to have concerns about, what's that doing to your pancreas? What's that doing to your blood vessels? We see folks who are eating lots and lots of really, really high sugar foods over time. There can be a higher risk for developing something like type 2 diabetes, which in some cases is reversible, but if it gets too far along, it's not. And so we want to make sure that we are kind of, playing the preventive card and ensuring that we have a long, healthy life. Because what's the point of all this other stuff if we're not having a long, healthy life that we get to spend time with all the people we really care?
All that hard work you're doing may not be for, may end up being nothing if you go early. What are some tips you have for those who tend to skip meals because they feel like, because they don't pre-plan or things like that? What ideas do you have for that?
Usually the first meal people are skipping is breakfast. And so it's a learned behavior, first of all. And so it may be kind of influenced by some information around intermittent fasting that may be improperly applied. So the first thing you can do is start to eat breakfast on purpose. Make a plan, sit down on, I don't care, pick a night, Sunday night, Wednesday night, whatever you want to do, and start with one day. Map out one day of breakfast. Like, what are you going to have tomorrow? And make it something that's easy. Maybe it's something you can make the night before and just heat up, or like in the case of something like an overnight oats, you can just pull out of the fridge and it's ready to go. Or something like if you want to do like a shake or something like that, you can do that. But find something that's easy, that's accessible, that you're not going to wake up in the morning and be like, the last thing I want to do, like, I don't want to make an omelet this morning. Like, fine, don't make an omelet. Like, make overnight oats the night before, or have like yogurt with some berries and nuts or granola or something like that. Something that's going to be easy, accessible, that you're going to enjoy, that you're going to look forward to, and see how you feel afterward. See how you feel throughout the course of the day, because you've given your body some fuel quite a bit earlier than you're used to. You may not realize it, but you stop paying attention to your hunger signals that hit in the morning. We are naturally, for most people, hungry in the morning, not necessarily right after you wake up, but usually within a couple hours, that hunger is going to strike. If you had dinner the night before, maybe a few hours before you went to bed, so it's probably been, 10, 12 hours since you last ate, and that's a pretty long time. And so we want to make sure that we're eating, a couple hours after you wake up, something like that, to see how you're doing. look, breakfast doesn't have to be huge. It can be as simple as banana and peanut butter, which is like on my brain because it's one of my favorite snacks. But it could be as simple as that, or it could be as simple as like there's, at least in the States, there's like Vans makes these waffles that are, and I'm not like sponsored by any products or anything like that. Vans makes these waffles that have protein added to them, and they're pretty good. My kids love them. My wife loves them. I like them. I'm not like a big waffle guy, but the nutrient profile on them is relatively good. You can add things like peanut butter or sun butter or whatever you want to it to change the flavor up. And that's an easy breakfast that's ready in like 5, maybe even less. You throw it in the toaster oven, because they're frozen, and it's ready. And you can have a nice warm breakfast to either have on the go, sit down at the table, whatever you want to do. I would encourage you to sit down at the table if you can. But, start making a point of eating breakfast and see how you feel. If you feel awful after eating breakfast, maybe we change the foods that you're eating. Or maybe you're one of like the small percentage of people that truly is not like actually hungry in the morning. And that's okay. Like everybody's a little bit different. But for the most part, we're going to want to be eating pretty consistently throughout the course of the day.
Right, right. Now, I'm going to point out that you never mentioned, and this is more for those in North America than in Europe, because fast food chains are not they're here. It's not the same. I promise. It's just not the same. But you never said, go grab that fast food item. You're like, oh, on your drive, stop here kind of thing. What I heard you talk about was like yogurt, almonds, apples, things we can have that are grabbable from our own fridges, right? Like, and put it in your bag kind of thing. So that's not to downplay, or not downplay, but to attack anybody who like goes that route. And there can be fast food places that have healthier options. But I think at the end of the day, it's about us preparing our food, us having things on hand that, and thinking ahead. Okay, this week's going to be crazy. Let me make sure I have some of those Greek yogurts. Let me make sure I already have some apples. We started buying apples by the boxes. So here in Germany, we have a place called Metro. It's just like Sam's Club or Costco in the States. And like we buy the boxes of apples because we just go through them so fast. It was like, let's just go ahead and bulk purchase some of these things that we know we need on a regular basis for breakfast, for snacks, for whatever it might be. And, if you're in the workplace, how easy it is to bulk buy some of those almond packs or whatever it might be, put them somewhere in your desk or in your bag so that it's always there until you need to buy again. I think often we just think in the moment, I need something right now, and not, hey, Saturday, Sunday, let me go ahead and prepare for the week ahead. So things like that help us in the journey you're talking about, improving that relationship. It's just kind of think ahead and make food a priority in a good way, because it is what's going to keep you fueled to being that high achiever. Burnout, I believe, is related to a lot of things. And one component is food and how we're not taking care of our health. And so it's great that you're saying, hey, let's just start with drinking enough fluid, like actual water. Let's just make sure, like, let's talk about shifting maybe some snacks. Let's look at breakfast. My own journey of switching to a savory breakfast and making sure protein and fiber and all these particular things was my own health journey of going, what I'm doing is not working. This doesn't work. Going in and getting blood work done to see what foods my body can tolerate, and going like, I'm all in on those then, and making that an option. That helps with my balance. That helps with me feeling regulated during the day. I know you've had your own journey to figure out like what works for me, what works for my family. And as you said, the kids, it changes. Like one day they like bananas, the next day they don't like bananas, right? And you're like, okay, cool, whatever. I've just bought a whole thing of it. But just recognizing what works for you, and then kind of going all in at it. Like, okay, right now, for the next 2 weeks, I'm in the almonds. Buy them and then you got it, right? And then next 2 weeks later, you're into something else. Make food a healthy relationship in your life, I think, is the gist of what you're saying, Jason. Is like, this needs to be something that it's good, and it is part of you being successful, not a detriment to my time and my energy and my whatever. Use it as like fuel up, like playing video games, or like power up, fuel up. That's your thing. That's what you need it for, in a good way.
Yeah. You can think like food, sleep, stress management. Those 3 things taken together support you. They lift you up, and they'll lift you up as high as you want to go if you take care of those 3. So those are kind of, your base level needs. Or, you're making sure you're getting enough sleep and good quality sleep, making sure you're managing stress and finding healthy outlets for it. Because there's going to be stress in life. It'd be kind of boring if there wasn't. And how are you going to manage it? You're going to manage it by working out, meditating, deep breathing. You pick your healthy outlet for it. And then when it comes to food, finding ways to make healthy choices accessible, because we are humans. We want the path of least resistance.
Yep.
So if we make it convenient to have healthy options, like a perfect example, I'll go to the grocery store and I will buy my kids love berries. So I'll buy so many packets of berries, so many cartons of berries that I can barely fit anything else in my fridge. But I will wash them like in vinegar a little bit and then let them sit and soak, whatever. That way they're ready to go. Like there's no like, oh, I have to get them out. I have to wash them. Like, they're ready to go. For things like bell peppers, I will pre-slice them and store them in water so that they maintain their like crispness, basically. They don't dry out. And that way, instead of saying like bell pepper, do I really want to like cut it, take the seed out, take the stem out, right? Like all that, like the prep's already done before they've even gone in the fridge. The more you can do things like that, the better served you're going to be, because things are going to be more accessible. You can also buy the pre-cut veggies sometimes. Let someone else do the work. You pay a little bit extra, but think about the trade-off in terms of the time that you would spend versus the little bit of extra money that you're spending. Like you can think about the value of your time and what the trade-off is. So if it's a matter of I'm going to spend a little bit more money to get the pre-cut onions, or I'm going to order dinner, like you're better off actually spending the money on the pre-cut onions than ordering dinner, because, well, just from like the financial perspective, you're going to spend less doing that, like buying the pre-cut onions, if that's the block. Or buy frozen vegetables. Like they are just as nutritious, and in some cases more nutritious than fresh, because they're picked at the peak of freshness or ripeness and then flash frozen at the facility. So like I'll buy the biggest thing I can find of frozen broccoli florette, because it means I don't have to break down like a pound of broccoli. I don't have to do anything to it. I just cook it. I just steam it, or like I'll thaw it and then roast it, or whatever the case may be, however I'm using it. But I don't have to deal with like breaking it down. I just have to plan ahead enough to know, hey, I'm buying like this 5-pound thing of broccoli that's going to last one meal in the house because I'm a dietitian and my kids love broccoli. That's the result. But things like that, steps like that you can take that are time savers, that don't cut the corner on the nutrition, but cut the corner on like the actual prep work that you have to do. So take the things you don't want to do and outsource them, and then do the things that you want to do and the things that are going to make you feel good, so that you can save time and not burn yourself out. Like think ahead a little bit, even if it's just a day ahead, and do use the tools that are at your disposal. Like I go to the grocery store still, but I also order groceries online all the time. Like I'll use Amazon Fresh or Fresh Direct or Instacart sometimes, because it helps me fit it into my day, where it takes me 15 minutes to order groceries. If I go to the store, I'm there for 45 minutes, because my local grocery store is New York City grocery store, which can be fun to navigate in different ways. But if I'm ordering groceries, it takes me 15 minutes because I know exactly what I want, and I stay more on point with my list, which is also another helpful thing for reducing impulse buys. And I can schedule a delivery for a time that's convenient, and it's one less thing that I have to actually do. Is there some degradation in terms of like the quality of the produce? Probably. Like I would probably pick better apples than what I get from the delivery services, but it's not such a step down that it like stops me. So I think that there's a time and a place for that as well, if that fits into your budget, if it fits into your lifestyle, to plan ahead and take steps like that. You can also just hit reorder, which is really helpful. So.
Jason, thank you so much. Thank you for the tips and the ideas, and really making it practical for our busy lives. If people want to connect with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm always happy to chat about nutrition, chat about food. You can find me on Instagram. I'm at wholefamilyhealth.co. That's also my website, wholefamilyhealth.co, and you can learn more about me and my practice there. See some pictures of my kids as well. I have 3 kids, so they are and they're all yeah. I have a 5-year-old. I have a 5-year-old and 3-year-old twins, so my hands are full all the time. But you can learn more there, see how I work, and we can start to work together as well.
Excellent. I'll make sure all the links in the show notes. When you mentioned the 5-pound bag of broccoli, I was like, he's got lots of kids like I do. Really, I get this. I get it. Where you're like, I can,
Yeah.
because it's gone in one meal. Yep.
Exactly.
Jason, thank you again for being here. And dear listener, here's to finding our balance code. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Take a moment to leave a rating and a review on your favorite podcast platform. That helps other listeners just like you to find this podcast too. Want to connect and learn how we can work together? Check out the links in the show notes below. Discovering your balance code doesn't have to be a one-person journey. You can have a team, and I'd love to support you. So here's to finding our balance code.